Well, hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the F14 build. Last video, we got the horizontal stabs or elevators set up, ready to go, completed. In this video, it's all about the rudders or vertical stabs. So stay tuned and we will continue with this build. All right guys, so we're moving into the rudders and we've got some special work to do with this aircraft. So if you look at the manual, read some stuff online, some guys do external linkages, some guys do internal linkages. Skymaster says only do the internal if you're gonna fly it really slow, but we're gonna do things better because that's what we like to do here at the lighter side of RC. And I hear Nez coming as well too, our favorite shop cat. All right, so we're gonna do an internal linkage. That's the goal here, but we're gonna beef up the actual surface. So none of this means anything to you right now. So let's get into working on these rudders. All right, so our goal here is to mount the servo here where it's supposed to mount, have an internal arm come out. This is just like the manual explains, and connect to the surface, but we're doing this differently. We're gonna grind out this area and we are going to put a ply plate in there with a blind nut to be able to fasten our servo linkage arm to, and obviously we wanna get as far out from that pivot point as possible. So that's the overall goal here. So to reach that goal, first thing we need to do is, for me visually, to transfer that servo plate inside there, which has some really funky angles going on. Transfer that to the outside so we can see what's going on. So all I've done here is take the pivot rod and inserted it till I hit the plate, marked it with my finger, transfer that with the same angle to the outside, and then we'll just do the other one, which is closer to the base here, keeping the same angle. So that's roughly where our servo plate is. Now our servo sits inside the green area and inserts like that. So that just gives me a rough visualization on kind of where our control arm is coming through. So we know it's going to come through kind of somewhere like that. Now if we put the surface on like this, we can see more visually rather than just guessing what we're going to be looking at. So that's kind of what we're after. Now when we grind this down, I don't know what the structure is underneath, but when we glue that plate on, if we glue it flat to the bottom of the surface, that may not work. We may have to angle it down a little bit more like that. It's kind of hard to show you with a bent screwdriver. But that's kind of the challenge that we're going through. And as usual, this is just my brain process working and sharing it with you guys. So we may be on a completely wrong track here, but this is how things work in the lighter side of RC. So that's what we're working on. Okay, so just working on geometry here, guys. So I'll show you a couple of our findings here. So number one, have sanded down the area where we're going to be mounting our ball joint and surface moving device. Okay, so you can see the servo plate right here. This is the servo plate coming through to the very end. So what I've done here now is adjusted my tape line, so now I know my servo angle is at that line. It does follow perpendicular to our hinge point as well too. And then what we've done here is installed the servo like that. And because we're using a clevis on the servo side, a ball joint on the surface side, we want this line to be nice and straight. So we've laid down another piece of tape to do our control rod line. And that gives us our geometry for everything in this area. So now what we can do with that geometry sorted out is we can play with our surface. So what we know now is that we want our ball joint and everything to be in this location because we've got the location where the rod's going to come out. I've done some sanding here. We want that plate to be fairly flat. So that is the key to making all of this work properly. So next thing to do is get this surface sanded out enough so we can high sol a plate in there that puts that ball joint right in line with everything just like that. And that's going to be the key to having proper geometry on this whole vertical stab setup. All right, so what we're using here is we're going to use 256 ball joints for 440 rods. So the 256 is the size, so it's the smaller size of them with the screw that goes through. So this is going to be mounted on the actual surface itself. And then fortunately, we've got our kits from rtlfasteners.com. So this is the Imperial and the 440 kit. Sorry, this is the Imperial with the 256 and the 440 kit. And we've got some blind nuts in the package here, so I don't have to go searching for all those little doodads that you need. We also do have a discount code for you guys if you use it. So rtlfasteners.com. Use the discount code JV30 to get 30% off your order. And the order has to be over $25. But discount code for you guys because these kits are amazing. All right guys, so done some more grinding here and I think everything's starting to look real nice. So what I'm doing here is just kind of getting this flat area right here as close as possible to being perpendicular to the hinge line. So we're not quite perpendicular, but we're very close. So we're almost splitting the difference. And then we sanded down this area because we need some area for the ball joint to actually move through, which is also going to work very well. So that's kind of the position of everything there. We do need to do some changes on the openings for the rod to come through, and there's one close to the servo over here as well too, but that's getting us really close to where we need to be, and we're going to have to make some final adjustments to it, but I'm loving that. I think it's going to work out absolutely great. Okay guys, so we're just doing a mock-up here on what we're looking at. So we're going to have a ply plate in there, and we're going to probably use the little angled pieces underneath the ball joint. So that's what I'm doing this for. So I just didn't want to get too carried away with our little cutout there. And I think what we have going here is going to work just fantastic. So all I'm doing at this point is kind of trying to determine how far away from the pivot point we want to mount this ball. We can only get so close to the outside wall here before it becomes an issue. So I've kind of maximized the amount of distance I can without being touching the wall. So I think that'll work out good. I'm not sure on the exact measurement, but I think we're getting in the right wheelhouse here. So next thing we're going to do is make a ply piece that fits in this area that we can put a blind nut behind, and we'll take this measurement from the pivot point to my little poker hole there, and that'll give us an idea on where to do the other side as well. Now keep in mind that these surfaces only have 16 millimeters of movement, so you could call that about 2/3 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, so not much movement at all. But for these surfaces, this is more about holding power than movement. All right, so we've just created a little template here. Hi, Artemis. For the mounting plate. So we've drilled a hole or cut a hole in the center, marked our pivot point. That distance in that pivot point to the mounting location is 14 millimeters that we're going with, just for reference. So that is what we use to cut a plate from our 1/8 inch aircraft ply. All right, so we've got our wood plate fit here, and everything looks really good with it. I'm happy with everything. It's got a nice perpendicular angle to it as well. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to drill through where our mounting hole is for the blind nut, and that's going to put a hole on the other side in that structure, which should be right there or really close to it. And that'll let us know where we want to create a little recess for the blind nut, because we don't want to put this in and have the blind nut pushing that up. So I'm going to get that completed here, and we'll be really close to being ready to glue that in. All right, guys, and we have a tip time for you. This tip time has been brought to you by Trusty Bent Screwdriver. All right, so when you're dealing with something like this, we've got a big chunk of balsa inside here, and we could just high-sol everything together and we'd probably be fine, but let's do it one step better. And we are going to put some CA on this balsa. Now the balsa, of course, because it's balsa, it's very, very thin or weak. So all we're going to do in this case is just take some thin CA and soak that balsa in CA. Let it soak in. It just sucks in like a sponge. And generally you don't need to use kicker, but in this case probably will. So we'll just spray some kicker on it. And now, with that done, our balsa's a little bit stronger, a little bit better, and it's going to be, in my opinion, a little bit better to glue something to now as well. Okay, so we've got everything ready to go. We've got our plate with our blind nut installed. This has been prepped, obviously. We've got a little bit of 9462 high sol mix. So again, for important stuff, guys, this is what I use for any critical joint on an aircraft. It takes 24 hours to fully cure. It takes a couple hours to set up where you can kind of work with it, but you need to leave that for a fair amount of time before you do anything with it. So we're going to treat this very carefully, and we're going to try and stay away from the blind nut with our high sol. And initially we're just going to put a bunch on the flat area here first. So let's just go ahead and do that. And then we'll work it around the edges to make sure that that plate is joined everywhere around the edge as well. So generous amounts there. We'll put a little bit on the blind nut here just to keep it fastened when this is all fastened into place, because we don't want that blind nut to push out. If you guys have built an aircraft before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So now we're ready to pop this into place. We've got our high sol there. We're just going to sneak that down. We've already test fit this multiple times, and there we go. So it's exactly where we wanted it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work that high sol around the edges as well. And this is where I tell you, Trusty Bent Screwdriver absolutely shines. Perfect tool for almost any job, but definitely the perfect tool for this job. Now we don't need to worry about going excessive here, because we can take our Dremel afterwards and just sand whatever we don't need out. So make sure you get this on there liberally and deal with it afterwards. And then we've got that Tamiya red paint, which is a very close color match, so we can just go in and paint this all afterwards. And same thing here, we'll just come down the back side. And the reason I'm doing this is just to tie as much of the skin in as possible to the plate that we've glued in place. That's that. Last thing we're going to do is we're just going to fill in around the hinge point. Because previously it was mounted to the skin of the surface, and now we'll make sure that we've reinforced it to mount to our plate. So that is exactly what we're looking for. So we're contacted everywhere. We're nice and flat with our plate, and I think this is going to work out absolutely awesome. So we're going to let this cure till tomorrow. Then we'll come in with the Dremel, clean some of this stuff up a little bit. You don't need to, but I'm just going to clean the side up there so we get less interference in this area with the ball joint and stuff. We want to make sure that we're not contacting anything there, and then we'll be able to get this thing installed and try it out. I just want to give a shout out to you guys that have donated to the Shop Build Fund. Thank you so much for those donations. Truly, truly appreciate it. It's amazing to see those donations roll in, whether they're big or small, whether they're from a girl or guy viewer. Our female viewership is pretty small, but we're getting donations from everybody. So thank you so much for that. And if you're watching this part of the video and you're like, what the heck is this guy talking about? We're crowdfunding for the shop build for the lighter side of RC. There's a bunch of links down below if you are interested in donating to the cause. Thanks guys for all the donations and the considerations. All right guys, we're working on these rudders and we are coming up with a good plan. So I took the servo horn that we already drilled the hole through for the elevators, and I tried drilling another hole through it, but it's just too short. So we're actually going to need another one of these guys. But fortunately we had a second one that we hadn't touched yet, which is why when I do a plane like this, I'll set up one surface that I've never built before. I'll set up one surface completely, make sure I'm happy with it, and then I'll do the other surface. So what I've done here is I took the other servo horn, drilled a 1/16 hole right on the inside of the other two holes, and then I trimmed the servo horn down and basically shaved it all off to come up with that. So we're using a clevis on that side. If you guys haven't seen my clevis and ball joint testing videos, the clevis has outperformed, golden clevis has outperformed anything else by almost 2.5 times. So it's definitely a superior way to do it. And right now I'm just getting the geometry all lined up. And it looks like everything's going to work well. So our goal there is we were trying to get that golden clevis as tight as possible to the outside skin, which we have done. I couldn't go out any further because that the stock hole was drilled in the way. So we've screwed a ball joint on all the way on the rod, and this is the longer rod that comes with the kit. So there's 4 rods in total. 2 different lengths, a longer and a shorter, and we've used the longer one for this scenario. So everything looks really good. We are going to be probably capping that rod with a carbon tube. We'll see how it all works. So now we're ready to put the rudder surface back on and bolt this thing up and see how it goes. So we did do some sanding here. I did a little bit of sanding on this side right there because the wood was sticking out just a little bit past, so we sanded that. And then we also cleaned up the area where the ball joint's going to be, just to prevent that from binding on anything. So we should be good here. We are going to dismantle this and paint it up and all that stuff, but I just want to get this put together and see how everything works. So next step here is I'm going to put the rod through. We're going to bolt that on and see how we're set up. All right guys, so we got everything hooked up here, and so far it works absolutely awesome. So everything works good there. We got just enough travel without doing any more trimming right there. So we're going to do a little bit more trimming to make sure that we've got enough. And I'll give you a shot here of what it looks like. So that's basically what we got for the vertical surfaces. Now this is kind of an important thing here. So this solution that I've come up with is rock solid, and once we get everything tightened up and stuff, it's going to be solid. Now if you look at the play in here, okay, there's play in the surface itself. So what that play is right now our ball joint and fixing and everything there is solid. So it's actually what's happening is we're pivoting on that ball, and if you watch the pin there that holds the surface in place, you'll see that all the play is in between the pin and the fiberglass things that come out from the surface. So let's take this off and I'll show you guys more detail on how we're going to fix that. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So here's our rod that goes through this whole piece. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check on these fiberglass pieces how it all fits. Okay, so we got a little bit of play there. So there's a little bit of play down here in the fiberglass pieces. So it could be that, but chances are what's happening is it's that guy right there, which kind of sucks. So I've dealt with this before in my my Carf Tudor. When I first got my Tudor, it probably had about 300-ish flights on it, and the fiberglass pieces here, this is for the elevator on the Tudor, that the rod goes through, had just gotten bigger. So what I did is I actually drilled this out, put a piece of DreamWorks airline in there, and basically made a spacer or a bushing, and still today after, you know, I don't know, a couple hundred more flights, it still is perfect. So that is how we can deal with this portion here, but that's not really our problem. I think our primary problem is this guy down here. There's just too much space in this bottom section here. I'm trying to show you guys, but so anyways, there's lots of play right there, which generally shouldn't be an issue because you've got all these mounting points, but it all just combines, right? It all just adds up and shows up in the surface. All right, guys, so a solution here for you, because the size difference is in the surface, not the mounting points, we have to increase the wire size. So if we look at the wire size, the stock one is 1.54 millimeters. And I just happen to have this piece of piano wire, music wire, and it is 1.61. So just a little bit bigger, but it's enough to actually make a difference here with this surface. But I think that we can do better. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a piece of piano wire that just fits in here and it's snug. So I do have a piece that is 2.02, but that is just too big. So it actually won't even fit inside the surface. Oh, it might. Yeah, it would be quite a stretch, I think, to get that all the way up to the top. But what I'll do is I'm gonna file this down and make it kind of pointy, and then we'll just see what happens here. And if this does happen to go through there, then all we have to do is make those holes an appropriate size. So let's just round that out, and we'll see if that works. Okay, so it might work. It's just a little bit big. I can force it in about 1 inch, but if we have to try and push it all the way in that 12 inches, it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop at the hobby store tomorrow, and we're going to see about getting some different size piano wire if we've got some other options. So hopefully we've got something that's in between these two, and it'll fit nicely. So I'm going to bring this surface in with me, and then we've got something to work with here. All right, guys, went to the local hobby store today, and all they had was the sizes that I already had. So we're like 1.5, 1.6. Now I did think about using my wire that I use to run lights and stuff. Now this is like 1.75. The next size up in piano wire is 2.0. So this would be nice as far as fit goes. Problem is it's not overly strong. I think it's aluminum, and it's quite flexible versus the piano wire. You can bend it if needed, but it's a lot stronger. So I think we're going to go with the kind of the compromise. We're not going to go with the standard pins for the hinges. We're going to go up in size in piano wire to the 1.73 or 6 or whatever it is, 1.6. And we're going to make them out of these. Now, I've already inserted this piece to test it. Makes a world of difference, gets rid of most of that play. There's just a slight amount left, but way better than these than the stock pins. So we're going to make a couple of those up, and then we'll be ready to put this this rudder together. All right, so we've taken the rudder apart for the last time. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to put a piece of carbon rod over top of the control rod. So I have marked that black Sharpie marker, and the end of the golden clevis comes right to the end of that Sharpie marker. So basically we need to get a piece of carbon rod that long, and we're going to high saw that in place, and then we'll put this back together and she will be good to go. All right guys, I'll just show you what I do when I put these control rods together. So one of the things I do is I will heat up my high saw so it's very runny. So you just use either a heat gun or whatever heat source you have, I guess. Yes, I'm just using a tin can or aluminum can. So when you heat it up, it just makes it flow a little bit better is all you're doing. So anyways, pretty straightforward. You're just coating the rod with high saw as much as you can. Now, because this is one of those critical items, we are using 9462, which is the long cure stuff. So we just get it together like that, and all I'll do is feed the rod through there. Try and get as much inside the actual piece of carbon as you can, and then I flip it around. And you can kind of feel it too, like once you get it, start getting it inside the carbon, it just stops feeling loose and it feels like there's liquid inside there or epoxy inside there, and the movement's dampened or it's slowed. So anyways, so that's what we're looking for. Now we'll just wipe off the excess, and then we're ready to install it inside the golden clevis, and we're good to go. All right guys, so we are all bolted together here and everything looks good. We still have to put our bolts inside our actual horn on the rudder servo itself, but everything went together nicely. That rod change there basically got rid of like almost all of the play. There's just a hair of play in that thing now, which is totally acceptable. That's way better than it was, so gotta like that. All right, so we've also got the light. So this is the white rear-facing LED light that goes on the left vertical stab. So while we're working on the rudders, we might as well get this installed. So it should be a pretty simple process. If you look at the little pin light there, it is tiny. So that'll have no problem fitting inside our little housing. Came with a bunch of awesome little lenses as well too. So this is a great setup that is also included with the Unilight kit for the F-14. So fortunately, we ran the string here previously up to this location. So all I'm going to do is hook up the wires. I'm going to cut the end off, and we're just going to hook it up to there, pull it through, and then we'll worry about getting the light glued in place. All right, so our light is all installed. That's the white strobe, or the white light. We did have to take the entire servo out and everything just to run the wires. It was really, really tight because the servo kind of blocks the opening where the wires have to come through. So anyways, now we got to put this back together, and this vertical stab should be ready to go, and then we'll just do our painting on this little bit here. All right, so we are all hooked up and we're good. There's a final shot there of the servo arm and all the wires and everything. a shot from this end. And everything looks awesome. And here's a shot of the rudder doing its rudder thing. So we've got the travel turned down in the dual rate menu just because it was at 100% before. So I've turned it down to about 40%, and we'll fine tune that later on. But it should be, I think right now, even though that's probably still more travel than what's recommended. But anyways, so that is mechanically complete. Next thing we'll do is we're just going to paint that, that section there red and make it look all pretty. All right, and there's our vertical stab installed. Obviously we have to do the wiring. We'll be taking care of that probably in the next video. I'm gonna pop this off and I'll show you how I painted the red on the underside. Now, that wouldn't have really mattered because you're never seeing that, but just in case. And there we go. So just cleaned up all the white glue and everything and painted that section red. So final little touch. All right, so we are complete with the vertical stabs. Now, the one that's sitting over there isn't done yet because we're waiting on that servo arm. So we're gonna just continue moving forward with the rest of the fuselage. And when we do get that vertical stab, it's going to be a quick installation. Of course, it's much like elevators or wings or anything like that. When you get one complete, the other one goes a lot quicker. So I'm not sure how you do your builds, but that's one of my suggestions to everybody is in a situation like this, if you're dealing with something new, try and get one side complete first, get it mastered, get it perfected, and then the other side will be really quick. I don't suggest trying to do two at the same time unless you've done this a whole bunch of times. So in the case of like an F-14, I can lay both wings out. I've done it so many times, put both together, and I know exactly what needs to happen. So just a suggestion for you. So thanks guys for watching the video. Hopefully you got something out of this, re-engineering these, the way these things are supposed to work. I'm sure the stock system works fine. I've seen the pictures in the manual on how to do it. I just felt like this was a better solution and we had more control over the mounting system in this scenario. I didn't know what was underneath those actual rudder surfaces in the surface. We found out it was a big chunk of balsa once we sanded the whole bottom part out. So now we know what's in there, but I'm happy with the way this worked out. I'm happy that there's no play now in these surfaces as well. That's an extremely important step to make sure you get accomplished. So thanks guys for watching the videos. Truly appreciate it. It's pretty cool to see where this channel has gone over the past 2 years. And it's kind of fun when you get those things pop up on Facebook and it's like, hey, 2 years ago you did this. And it's pretty amazing to see the growth in 2 years. So hopefully things keep going upwards and onwards and better, and we continue having fun at the channel. I'm having fun doing this. Hopefully you guys are having fun watching the videos. So thanks for watching guys, and we will see you in the next video.